everybody. I'm Margo Downs. I've had the opportunity to work with three great companies, Starbucks, Lululemon, and Stitch Fix. These companies were focused each in their own way on creating great cultures where people can thrive. The connection between great companies and great cultures is no accident. As Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. To say the least, the last year has challenged everything we know, including the ways we work. Today, we'll be discussing how to build culture in the midst of these turbulent times with our panelists who are on the front lines of this issue. So let's go ahead and meet our panelists.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Barnes. I am a Chief People Officer here at Gitlab. I've spent the last 20 years in human resources and people functions in high tech in Silicon Valley, and I'm happy to be here with everyone today.
Great. Wendy, why do you love what you do?
Oh, I love building teams. I love seeing team members be productive and the results and the products that they create, seeing business success. That gives me great joy, and enabling people to develop their career and grow. That is my passion.
Fantastic. So happy to have you, Wendy. Let's go over to Jacqui. Jacqui, why don't you give us a little intro?
Hi, and thanks for having us. It's great to be here with all of you. I am the Chief People Officer for WPP, which is the largest marketing, media, and advertising agency in the world. We're over 100 countries and over 100,000 people, and responsible for 1 in 5 impressions that are created. So it's an enormous honor to be the people lead for this organization. My role before that, though, was the Chief People Officer for Walmart, also a great company, one where I learned so much. And I spent the first 25 years of my career with another great company, Accenture, which was the best classroom to learn all about human capital and what it means for people to thrive.
Fantastic. And Jacqui, why do you love what you do?
Well, I feel like I'm going to take Wendy's answer. I mean, we might all have the same answer because I think that's what draws us to this profession. But WPP, as I said, is responsible for so many great impressions, and the people that are attracted to that work, the high energy, high creative, is the connection between technology and creative. And I love that space and what we do for our clients. But what I love about my job is that I get to foster the environment and the culture that has people attracted to this industry, to this company, so that they can do their best work and be the amazing creatives that they are.
That's wonderful. Thanks for joining us today, Jacqui. We're so happy to have you. Let's head over to Jig, last but not least.
All right. Thank you, Margo. So hi, everyone. I'm Jignasha Grooms, and I'm CHRO for Epicor Software based out of Austin, Texas. We are an ERP company, primarily SaaS, and we are the essential partner to essential businesses. You've probably heard of many of our customers, from Ace Hardware to the Chicago Bulls to the Hyatt Hotels. And I'm delighted to be here because I've been in the tech industry for a little over 21 years and in HR for the last 16 years. Before Epicor, I was at Cisco for almost 9 years. And Margo, I loved what you said about culture eating strategy for lunch, because I think that is 100% spot on.
That's great. And Jig, why do you love what you do?
So I'm going to echo what Jacqui and Wendy said as well. But my favorite part about being the head of the people strategy is that I really do believe that employees are the key competitive differentiator. And it hasn't mattered what business I've been in, whether it's software or hardware or connectivity. The people really make the difference between a great customer experience and also great business results. And I've seen that proven over and over. So I love that we've gotten to a point where we can really quantify the value of HR and people.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jig. We're really happy to have you. All right, are you ready? Let's dive in with some meaty questions to talk about today. So let's start with one about the pandemic. How did the pandemic impact your employees? And what are the top areas of your concern?
I'll jump in there, Margo. Gitlab, we believe we're the largest organization all remote before the pandemic hit. So we were a little bit different and unique in that our team members were already working remote and were already distributed, but they now were working from home with their partners or their spouses or their housemates and their children and the dogs, and everyone was in their space. And so that became a big shift for us. And we really focused on our team members' physical and mental health. And physical of making sure that they knew the protocol for the country that they lived in, or the general guidance that we were getting about COVID, sharing that, disseminating that information. And then things such as mental health, like how are we checking in with them? How are we making sure that they're okay? We created a mental health checklist that I encourage any of you to go look at. Gitlab.com, search our handbook. We're very transparent, and you can find that mental health checklist there. And then we looked at our children, our team members' children. How were they doing in this? And how could we give a little bit of relief to our employees and team members to give them a break? And we created these juice box chats for the elementary kids and younger. And they were able to connect with other children across the globe. We're in 66 countries. So what an enriching environment to be on Zoom and learn from someone that was in a different country about their culture. So those were a couple of things that we did to quickly try to address this concern with the pandemic hitting us.
Wow, those are so thorough and well-rounded, especially when you think about children and how children have been impacted and parents. So kudos to you for really taking that on. Let's go over to Jacqui. I think your organization, very different than Gitlab. So tell us a little bit about how the pandemic impacted your employees and what were the top concerns.
Yeah, we were a very in-office culture, and we, didn't ever think that we could have done what we did, which was to go remote for 100,000 people in basically a 24-hour period. But we had the lessons learned because our China colleagues were impacted by the pandemic before most of the rest of the world. And we learned to be people first as our number one mantra. So what are the health and safety, just like you, Wendy, said, for our people, their physical safety and then their mental well-being. And one of the things I remember deeply when that March 14th happened, and this is a little bit about me. My husband's a retired Secret Service agent, and he saw me with like my hair on fire and running around trying to figure out how to help 100,000 people and their leaders go remote. And he's like, Jacqui, you can't work this way for forever. And we don't know how long this is going to go on. And he was very right. So what we did was quickly organize into what were we doing in crisis? What were we doing to stabilize the organization? And then what were we going to do to start to talk about the future? Because we didn't know how long, and we needed our people to not all be working in crisis. And how did you deploy a team to manage crisis? Because that was very real. Rolling out things like employee assistance programs, making sure that, the health and safety was all taken care of so that we could focus then on what is the mental well-being, and then how are we serving clients, because that, is our business, but also they needed us more than ever at the time. And it was the way we got through the beginning and then realized this is not ending. So how will we continue? And then I would add that not just the health pandemic, but in May and June, when George Floyd was murdered and many other senseless murders, we had what we call a second pandemic. And how are we going to mobilize again to take care of our people, create safety, and change our culture so that we were addressing the very point of that second pandemic, that we needed to be a better DE&I company, and why that mattered even more for a creative company that was serving clients and creating these impressions. So I could go on and on about the lessons that we learned through that and how we continue to, evolve our culture to be better. But I think it's both of those things that really uniquely impacted all of our companies and our lives, that have shaped who we are today and how I think we'll be different in the future.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing out the events that occurred with George Floyd and many of the senseless murders. That was definitely another factor that impacted the world, people personally, and the workplace. I'm curious, what were some of the reactions from your employees with the DE&I focus that you did?
In June, there was a call to action written by over 1,200 Black advertising executives that were not just WPP, but across the industry, that listed exactly that, a call to action. And our CEO quickly recognized that was a good call to action. So we signed up publicly to do what was stated there. And it included reviewing your HR processes top to bottom. So what were the policies that were in the way that were causing bias to happen, and making those data points known to our people, like publishing our data. There was a number of activities that we're still executing on that list. But the second thing we did was say we would use the power of our voice. And I know I've made the point that we do have a strong voice and the ability to have great influence in how we create ads or impressions. And it was to create a committee and a review that people could raise their hand and say, I'm not proud of the work, or I want to be proud of the work, and be able to say, stop that work, or raise it up and see change that way with our clients. And our clients have really, I think, stood and appreciated our conviction on that. And then the third thing as part of that commitment was to have a $30 million over 3 years investment in training, education, charitable organizations that were going to serve, to solve for this racial injustice that is not just in the United States, but around the world. And I've been really proud of us recognizing where we're not perfect and how to continue to get better, and watch us evolve every quarter. And we report to the board. We hold now our leaders accountable in their pay, and it will be a long road, but I am seeing change now, and that makes me proud, but certainly not proud enough to say that we're done.
Jacqui, thank you for sharing that. So comprehensive. And I just love the taking responsibility for all the impressions that you have in the world. It's just so powerful. Thank you so much. Jig, is there anything you wanted to add about ensuring the well-being of your people in your organization?
Yes, well, I have to say, just listening to Wendy and Jacqui makes me proud to be a part of this profession, right? Because I think if we lead with our people at the center of our business value proposition, it immediately makes a big difference. So very similar story to Jacqui in that we had to get over 99% of our population virtual within a week. And thankfully, because of our China colleagues, we saw a little bit of it coming. I think one of the things that was unique to our industry that may be a little bit different than what Wendy and Jacqui experienced is we really had to figure out how to drive cost savings and business continuity, because everything just deteriorated. The business, all of our annual operations planning, the forecasting we had done. And one of the things I'm proudest of is that we as a leadership team came together and said, what can we do to have minimal impact on our employees from a benefits and a compensation perspective so that they feel well taken care of during a time of great uncertainty? And we actually engaged our employees as part of that process. So instead of immediately going to layoffs and furloughs, we talked to our employees about maybe doing a 4-day work week and everybody taking a 20% pay cut, and led by example with the C-suite starting first. And it made a huge difference, not because the employees felt like they were part of the process, but because they also felt like we were willing to walk the talk. And I think that, Jacqui, also goes into the DE&I piece. And really, when you talk about fairness and equity and inclusivity, I know that that's very important to me as a woman of color. And I know it was very important to all of our employees to feel like they were part of the solution and not just that one was forced on them. The one other thing, Margo, that I would add is we always had wellness as a key priority for HR, but we moved it way to the top. Mm-hmm. So it went from being one of our priorities to the very top one. And we led every communication from any member of the executive team with your health, safety, and wellness is our top priority. And we just did fun things, quick videos that we would share with our employees, encouraging them to keep balance where they could, depending on country laws, to your point, Jacqui, because some of our employees were in complete lockdown, whereas others of us could at least, just experience some fresh air. But we did some fun challenges like 40 million steps in 41 days and went to all the different locations we have. So I think engaging your employees to be part of the solution really makes a big difference during unprecedented times. And it paid off. We had one of our best business years we've ever had, with the best July numbers we've ever had in our 40-year history.
That's fantastic. What was the impact on employee retention, Jig, during that period?
It was wonderful, Margo. So I, much like all my peers, constantly am looking at attrition benchmarking And our attrition numbers were some of the best we've seen in years. And we're in highly competitive markets: Monterrey, Mexico, Bangalore, India, Bracknell, UK, Austin, Texas. So we actually had great retention of employees. And in addition to just attrition going down, we had a lot of employees post on Glassdoor how much they appreciated the focus on them. And the best part is, and I fundamentally believe that when you put your employees at the center of your business value proposition, they reflect it forward to your customers. And because of that, many of our customers had their best year they've ever had as well. So it was a beautiful virtuous cycle.
I love it, Jig. And I've always believed that like whatever is internal is external, especially today. And I think you're showing us the power of that. Okay, let's dig in a little bit, taking another turn. So one of the things I know I've heard from people that I am working with is just concerns about how strong the culture can stay when when many things are virtual and people feel like the culture is being tested. So how did you feel that your cultures were tested, and what areas were exposed that may not have been exposed before? Jig, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a bit more of a global perspective. So, we worked really hard the last 4 years around having a one Epicor culture. And so what worked for us, Margo, was really driving engagement and alignment through communication. But what didn't work is in many parts of the world, our employees had to go back to their native places. If I take an example like Bangalore, India, where you have software engineers, and I see Wendy nodding her head, so I know she understands this, but many of them live in what we call PGs, paying guests, right? Where you're renting a room. So something like COVID shut all of that down. Wow. And so we had, about 25% of our workforce that had to go home, back to their native places. And so the biggest, I would say, challenge for us was really getting them set up to be productive wherever they went. Because if we couldn't do that, then the engagement wasn't there. And when they weren't engaged, then the productivity would suffer, then the performance would suffer. And we know this cycle as well, right? So there's the good virtuous cycles, and then there's the downward cycle. So I would say that was our biggest challenge, and it continues to be, because the lockdowns are still in effect in lots of parts of the world. And we're waiting, we're taking a wait and see approach and doing our best to keep all of our employees engaged, creating a timeline with which they can come back. And we put into place a preparedness plan, because I want employees, when they come back, to feel comfortable and safe returning to the office or returning to our core locations, even if they decide to work virtually for a while.
That's significant. I think we could probably spend the whole time talking about bringing people back into the office or keeping people virtually. That's a whole other topic, which I think is really fascinating. But thanks for sharing that and giving us a little insight into your culture and how it has impacted your employees. Who else wants to jump in and talk a little bit about how the last year has really tested the culture?
I'm happy to jump in too. I think about, where has it not tested us? It's been in every part of what your values are never more tested than in a time like this, and how you think about your people at the heart and how you treat your clients. And one of the things that came to mind, and I'd say we learned as a result of the pandemic about our culture, was, like so many companies, we were going to cancel our intern program. And I felt really strongly, our CEO felt really strongly, that that's such an early career part of the talent pipeline for us. People would never forget or forgive us for having done that. And while there's economics to building an intern program, we pivoted to an all online one, like a lot of companies. And we had 300 interns scheduled to show up in our offices in the United States. And I hope that the 300 were going to sign up and do the online version. Instead, we had almost 1,000 people sign up to join us, and it wasn't paid, it was just experience. So that just shined a light on how much learning people were thirsty for. And when we built it out, it was 10 weeks of programming, and our clients wanted to be a part of it. And we had academics, and it was just became a really enjoyable experience for the participants and the faculty. And when we reviewed our results, we had over 71% of the participants were women, and over 50% of the participants were people of color. So it tested us in a way, but like I said, we learned that if we opened up our minds and we created an opportunity that we maybe wouldn't have thought of if the pandemic hadn't hit, of just what that could do for the pipeline of talent and leaders for the company. So now it's become a part of us, and it's been something our clients are excited about again. So I'm an optimist, so I have to see the half full on this one and think that's the type of learnings we all probably have that are going to go with us and test us, but learn that we'll be stronger.
Well, one of the things I love, I've thought about this a lot, is, constraints make creativity. And, we had a lot of constraints in the last year with being virtual, but it has allowed access to so many more people. I mean, I know even from the smallest things of being able to take certain classes that were not accessible. I took a class with Second City in Chicago that was an improv class, and I would never have been able to do that class being based in San Francisco. So I think that I love that you guys leaned into something that could really have been just a constraint in terms of moving forward, and really, it really blossomed into something great. So thanks for sharing that. So one of the other ideas I have, I'm just going to toss out to this group, is that I think that sometimes I've heard people say, oh, we're having culture issues because of the pandemic or because of the other things that occurred, with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. But my hypothesis is that some of those things were there already, and that this just exposed those issues in the culture. Did any of you see something like that in your own organizations that was already there, but really got exposed?
So Margo, I'll jump in on this one. So absolutely, I think you're spot on about that. And I think, Jacqui, I want to pick up on a thread that, you just brought up. I do think that there were a lot of positives from what happened. And I think it really allowed us to pilot the future of work, but it also allowed us, Margo, to have some crucial conversations that were lacking in the workplace, right? So we have more than half of our employees outside the US. People always say, well, then that doesn't apply to us because it doesn't apply everywhere in the world. I actually think that conversations around DE&I are relevant everywhere in the world. And I think the fact that leadership was willing to have the discussions, and we didn't have to take a public stand because we're a B2C company, right? We provide software to companies, but the fact that leadership was willing to have a conversation about it and talk about how we want to create a environment where employees feel respected and valued, I think that made a big difference, and it opened the door. And I would tell you, for me, it was wonderfully eye-opening, much like what Jacqui said, because I had employees call me directly to talk about some of those situations. And what was really interesting to me is that all of the employees that called me about Black Lives Matter were actually white, and surprisingly white women. So I loved that people were open to the conversation regardless of their gender or ethnicity. I think we're facing the new version of that right now with what's going on in the US. And I think we have a lot of that going on all around the world. And I think International Women's Day and important significant milestones where you can pick up the thread of that conversation have really come to light because of COVID, because all of us went online so much. And because in a way, I think it gave us all, in a wonderful way, a forum to be really authentic in the conversation. So it's definitely been a topic of conversation for us everywhere from candidate pipelining. Like we're actually now using AI to take unconscious bias out of the candidate pipelining process. Because why not? Why wouldn't you do something like that that drives innovation, efficiency, and takes out unconscious bias? We're weaving that into our manager training to make sure that they understand what those biases are. And we all have them. I have mine 100%, right? So I think those kinds of conversations kept being brushed aside before. And I think a lot of what's happened in the last 12 to 14 months has pushed us to the forefront of that. And I'm delighted by it as someone who wants to see that fairness and equity. I think it's a really important one.
That's great.
I would add to that too, if you don't mind. We talk a lot about future of work as professionals in HR, but also in our companies. And what you just said really brought to life how it's pivoted for us here at WPP, where we did a whole study when I was at Walmart, which was great, around these are the skills of the future. This is what you need, digital growth mindset, data-driven decision-making, all these things that make really good sense. And empathy was always on the list. But now it's empathy to compassion, because think about the way that our people have to lead, the way that all of you guys are leading. It's really a different way of thinking about empathy beyond just that I can appreciate how someone's feeling, but I have compassion for how my team is feeling. And I think as leaders, that is the future of work. It's going to be inclusion. And how do you bring a team together, whether you're virtual or otherwise? And that to me will be the successful leader, the one who could be inclusive with compassion.
That's so great. Let's dig a little bit more on leadership. So what have your leadership teams done specifically to support your employees throughout all of these experiences and occurrences? Let's hear from Wendy. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So one thing we designed as a team pretty quickly was Friends and Family Day. We saw productivity go up, and we were really concerned that our team members were not taking the time to have the breaks and that burnout was going to start coming in. So we introduced Friends and Family Day. We've just had our 9th one on Friday. So they happen about every month or so. And it's a day where we completely shut down, including leadership, because if leadership is online, everyone else is going to follow. So we shut down, and it gives everyone a moment to take a breath, to get out into nature, to have some space, to do whatever they need to do. But we've always had a culture of friends and family first, work second. And so we just brought that to the forefront and talked a lot more about it. And as an executive team, we exemplified that. So we gave examples. We showed, our CEO would show on our Slack channel that he was playing a video game saying, "I'm taking a break. It's time for you to take one too." We created a Slack channel where we said, "Talk and walk." We're big on Zoom since we're all remote. So it always is usually cameras on, but we wanted people to get out and get exercise. So we created this talk and walk and take a little picture, a selfie as you're out walking and getting that fresh air. So those were a few things, but where I think it's so critical, and Jig talked about this too, is just leadership exemplifying the values and the culture. And then that allows all the team members and employees to feel, oh, I can do this. My leadership team is doing this, and they want me to take a break, and they're talking about it constantly.
Yeah.
It's such a great point. And I think with being remote, I think that it's easy for people to lose that thread. And so being able to reinforce that and really have your leaders show it is just so important, especially during these times. Jacqui, maybe you can wrap up this section and tell us a little bit more about what leadership has done to support your employees.
Sure. Our CEO has been really visible in this whole time, and I'm really proud of that. When we were not, like I said, this online community, but he was the first to get online and open up in teams, 10,000 people and at a time, to start to just talk about how people were feeling. It wasn't a scripted agenda or anything like that. And I think that made it okay for everybody to feel safe. So we started to call them safe rooms, where you could go talk about whatever was on your mind around the world. And that continued and still does today. We just had another one today that was talking about inclusivity. So I think it starts at the top, and it gives permission and expectation that then everybody else is operating that way. And I think that that's also something that stays with us for good. And Mark was also very visibly the first leader out in our company to talk about mental wellness. Mm-hmm. And we've created a whole allyship program where our people are being trained to be allies, to recognize when people need help. And it's just another example where I think we'll continue to learn from our people about what they want and what they need, and our leaders are open to help.
Thank you so much, Jacqui. And I think this is a good segue to talk a little bit about what's ahead, because I'm hearing from all of you on the panel that the learnings that came out and some of the issues that arose in your solutions are not going to go away when the pandemic goes away. They're really great learnings that will carry forward. So let's talk a little bit about what opportunities do you see as we move ahead to have a more authentic and thriving culture. Jig, can you tell us a little bit more about what you see for the future?
Yes, I'd love to. So, as I shared earlier, we have more of a hybrid model where our employees come in, some of them all 5 days because that's what they prefer, but most employees about 3 days a week. So I think really creating that environment where employees feel like they can drive their own balance from a work-life perspective continues to be something that will focus on. You know, I love what Wendy and Jacqui both said about leadership showing up by example. I think that's very important. So one of the things we've talked about as a leadership team is really making sure that we stay connected in small but significant ways. We like using those words, small but significant ways with our employees. For instance, I also had an all hands this morning, Jacqui, and we actually played a game during the all hands. And the winner of the game gets to have lunch with me whenever I get to their location or virtually, right? So I think small, important moments that matter are going to be something that we move forward with. And then the last thing I think we will move forward with that's going to be very important for our employees is creating workspaces that really honor people meeting their highest purpose, right? So we're never going to be a Google or an Apple, so we're not going to be able to provide campuses like that, but providing opportunities. For instance, we have regular meditation classes in our Bracknell, UK office. In our Bangalore office, the team often gets together on Saturday mornings for walks or jogs or just to spend time together. So making sure that we're creating opportunity for our employees to engage in a way that's meaningful for them will really matter. And I want to add this one last thing, because I heard both Wendy and Jacqui bring this up, but we have a day we give employees for epic giving. And that could mean whatever you want it to. It can mean volunteering at a hospice to spending time with a relative or a friend or a loved one. And we really encourage our employees to do that on their own terms, because I think it's important to give people that power to make those decisions themselves. So really creating a culture, not just of inclusivity, but also of empowerment, where employees feel like they don't have to check in and that their higher purpose can be met while still delivering great work.
So many wonderful things coming up. Higher purpose, compassion, inclusivity. I can't believe it, but we're coming to the end of our time together. So what I'd love for you to leave our audience with is just one nugget of advice. So this is going to be a lightning round that you would share with leaders who are trying to build and maintain an authentic, thriving culture. Jacqui, let's start with you.
Sure. I have 3 things I would say in one sentence. So it's focus on growing yourself, focus on growing your team, and then focus on growing your business.
Fantastic. Let's head to Wendy. Lightning round number 2.
I would say keeping an even playing field as companies are deciding what hybrid's going to look like or how they're going to return, making sure that that employee experience is the same for everyone. We all know what it can feel like when you're remote and everyone's in a conference room. So now let's make sure it's even and have that equal playing field.
Great. Jig, wrap us up for the lightning round.
Yeah, I would say leading with compassion and kindness, and also leading by example, because when you build high trust amongst an employee base, the business results will follow.
Fantastic. Well, I want to wrap us up with just thanking all of you for the wisdom that you've shared. I think, I'm taking away so many ideas and just the threads. I think I mentioned this before, but I think there's really something in here about how you really all have maximized what could have been something that was detrimental in the pandemic and through the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd impact, and really turned it into something that's going to be a lasting change that really improves the culture and improves the engagement of your employees. And I love the ideas that you're bringing through about choice for employees and inclusivity and compassion, which are things I'd love to hear more of in the workplace. So thank you so much for sharing your learnings and helping us get a glimpse of what the bright future is ahead for us.
And thank you, Margo.
Thank you.